anyone familiar with toys probably knows the name McFarlane. They're responsible for all those cool Spawn figures, and for a while they had the Halo license. And hey, it was a match made in heaven. Now, I was never an avid collector of this line, but I had a family member who worked at Giant Tiger, that's a Canadian retail chain, and they got a surprising amount of Halo stuff in. I'm guessing these were like overflow from Walmart or Toys R Us and wound up in a bit of a liquidation scenario. But hey, whatever, it worked out for me. The first figure we're going to talk about is Tartarus from Halo 2. He comes with a gravity hammer, a cool piece of shoulder armor, which can be removed, or maybe it can't and the glue wore off. He can open and close his jaw, and his cool sash is actually a separate piece, so it kind of jiggles around as you move him. This is a really hefty figure. It's got a lot of weight to it, and unlike so many others from McFarlane, this one's really stable. Even when clutching the giant gravity hammer, Tartarus has no problem standing on his own. In terms of articulation, this figure's a little strange. Tartarus can move his head, his arms, his elbows, his legs, his knees, everything you would expect. The problem is, once he's holding the hammer, there's only really one way to pose him. Additionally, his hands are kind of molded into a grabbing position, so once the hammer's handle is jammed in them, it's not really worth taking out. In terms of details and paint, this figure is absolutely impeccable. There's a great difference between his exposed elephant-ish skin and the tufts of hair, and the few pieces of metal armor have a slight metallic sheen. Like I said, this is an excellent figure all around. Next up is this yellow Flight Elite with a beam rifle. If Tartarus was one of my favorites, this is one of my least. But hey, if this is as far as you can lower the bar, we're doing pretty good. All in all, this is a pretty neat little toy. It just has a few issues. For starters, I find the face, the helmet, really bland. And the paint, while vibrant, isn't really that interesting in terms of its texture. So many of these figures will have a metallic type sheen, whereas this Elite looks like he's made of plastic. I mean, he is, it's just that there's no real illusion that it would be anything else. That said, I really like the texture of his arms and legs, like the exposed, I guess it's skin? And the shoulder attachments are pretty cool too. The hands on this guy are probably some of the worst McFarlane has ever done. It's really tough to get any weapon in them because his fingers are curved back so far, and he can really only hold the handle of the beam rifle, with no way to support it with his other hand. The beam rifle itself, however, is quite fantastic. I guess you could say that about all the weapons here. McFarlane really knows how to get those little details right. It's perfectly accurate to the game, and even at such a small scale, there's a lot of variance in the paint. The next four figures all came together. This is the Halo 3 campaign co-op set. And I gotta say, there's a lot of bang for your buck here. First up is Master Chief. This is the Halo 3 design, which is basically just the Halo 2 design with a bit of battle damage on his chest piece. Already you can see what I was talking about in regards to the paint. Compared to the Flight Elite, there's a more tangible sense that this armor is made of metal. The undersuit is more of a dull matte, while the various individual pieces of green have a slight bit of shine. And with his golden-hued visor, the effect is even more prominent. I think in general, human characters are easier to design than aliens in terms of articulation. Again, this was never McFarlane's strong suit. Their toys always look best posed, almost like mini statues with slight customizability in terms of how they're positioned. But with Chief, I could see a kid playing with them and having some fun. Arms, legs, elbows, knees, and even his ankles are all slightly adjustable. And like Tartarus, he stands pretty well without additional support. Chief comes with the Halo 3 assault rifle, which he can hold with one hand or two. If you're looking for a Master Chief figure, this is a very solid option. And with the rest of the stuff in this box, it becomes a downright steal. Next up is the Arbiter clad in bronze armor. I do like how the more golden hue complements the various blue stripes streaming across his scaly body. And while it takes a bit of effort to get the carbine into his hand, it looks good once it's there. His right hand is positioned in such a way that gives him a few options in how he can grasp various objects. The problem is the left hand has his fingers permanently outstretched. It looks like he should be holding an energy sword. And spoiler alert, I do have another Arbiter figure to show later who does just that. Both figures are made from the same mold, so I imagine this is more of a repaint to differentiate it and justify its inclusion in this box set. Since I'm going to be talking about the other one later and they're so similar, there's really not a lot more to say here. I guess I could mention that the Arbiter has big feet, so he can stand reasonably well, but that's assuming the rest of his weight is positioned in a very specific manner. So maybe now you know what I was getting at. Some of the alien figures, yes, they're posable, but only certain positions will actually work in terms of display. The third figure in this set, and I'm bound to butcher the name, is Uzay Taham. This is the Red Elite that's playable during the campaign, I believe by Player 3, or 4, one of the two. This one's easily the worst in the set. That's not to say it's bad, but there are certain elements that just don't work for me. For starters, he has the same cool, scaly arm texture as the Flight Elite, and the armor, while it's not quite metallic, does look a little better. The problem is I don't really like the way the neck looks. The paint is much less impressive. It's just a plain gray with a slight wash. And really the articulation here is just not up to snuff. Like he can raise his head ever so slightly, but it's just going from a total slouch to less of a slouch. Additionally, his hands have that same problem where the fingers are just too curled. Yes, you can get a weapon in there, and once you do, you dare not remove it. You may notice his plasma rifle is kinda crooked, probably from trying to jam it between his fingers. And unlike the Arbiter, this guy's got much smaller feet. So yes, he can stand on his own, just not particularly well. Anyway, I'm mostly being hard on this figure because I find this armor's just not that cool. It's really more of a preference thing. In terms of the mold and the paint, everything here is pretty much up to the standard you would expect. But really, my main issue is that the next figure, Natho Saram, the Blue Elite, is just so much better. If you put a gun to my head, I'd probably say this is the best one in the set. And I have a few reasons for saying that. First of all is the paint. More so than either the Arbiter or the Red Elite, the difference between his more dull-colored skin and shiny blue armor is extremely stark. This is the kind of figure that really benefits from being placed next to a window or source of light. And aside from that, the design is just so much cooler. Like, I know this is the multiplayer Elite, but for the sake of making a display, it easily stands in for a standard enemy unit. I love how spiky he is on his shoulders and especially his helmet, which, surprise surprise, is actually removable. Yes, his head looks a little smaller without it, but that's more of an issue with the actual design and not the toy itself. Of course, in the interest of fairness, I must mention this guy's got the same feet as the Red Elite. So again, not the best at standing. I know I'm harping on that a lot, but none of these figures come with pegboards. The Elite doesn't even have holes in his feet, so if you had them, they wouldn't help. In terms of weapons, this set comes with 3 carbines, A personal favorite and well represented here with extremely good detail, especially along the gun's barrel. There's 3 plasma rifles which look good, and as I mentioned, they are prone to warping, unfortunately. The good old battle rifle, BR, the assault rifle, and a plasma pistol. Yeah, these guys are packing some major heat, and considering these 4 characters are really cool and look good together, this is a must-own for any serious Halo figure collector. So yeah, those 4 toys were sold together in a box. What I'm going to show you next is a complete set, as in you would buy these toys individually, and I just happen to own all of them. Let's start with the Arbiter. This is the one we were talking about earlier. Unlike the campaign co-op set, this guy's got a cleaner silver armor. I'm a little torn because I think I like the aesthetics of the bronze better, but this is much more striking. There's a lot more contrast between his skin and the metal. Mine seems to be missing some protective plating along his right arm, but hey, it's cool. He'll manage just fine. And as I mentioned earlier, this one comes with an energy sword. So looking at this pose, you can probably tell it just looks so much more natural than, say, a carbine. The sword itself is pretty cool. The hilt has its own gray paint job, and the rest of the blade is a transparent plastic. The very tips of the blade are a little thin and maybe prone to bending, although I don't have this thing stored in the best place. It's just thrown in a bin with all the other Halo figures. Maybe I should have put the weapons in their own little box. And you know what they say about hindsight, it's 2020. But we already talked about the campaign co-op Arbiter, so let's move on to Dutch from ODST. I love how this guy seems to feature proper scale. In universe, ODSTs are standard humans, whereas the Spartans are augmented to be much taller. So standing next to Chief, he looks like a bit of a child, but again, that's game accurate. Dutch has a lot of detail going on here, maybe more so than some of the other figures. He's got explosives and satchels strapped to his chest, his legs. He's got a jetpack. His helmet and armor features decals, and his thighs have a slight military camo effect applied. Certain pieces are metallic and others are more plain. It's really quite cool. And he comes with the Spartan laser. Again, a very impressive rendition of the in-game model. And his range of articulation, while slightly compromised by his armor, does allow him to cradle the weapon in a fairly satisfying way. The only real issue is that his wrists are very thin. It's possible mine has succumbed to wear and tear, or maybe they were always floppy, I don't know. The result is a figure that looks really good when you set it up. Just don't touch it or he's bound to drop his gun. The third figure in the Halo Anniversary series is the Spec Ops Grunt. I guess I'm not enough of a hardcore fan to really recognize the differences in the various forms of grunts. To me, there's the ones that have helmets that take 2 headshots, and the rest of them. I guess he's gray, maybe that's the giveaway. Anyway, the grunt comes with a fuel rod cannon. Or rather, the fuel rod cannon comes with the grunt, considering how big it is. This figure actually has terrible leg articulation, and its feet just don't seem to bend the way they should. If not for the fuel rod cannon acting as a bit of a kickstand, he probably wouldn't even stand at all. But hey, that's fine. It's a striking piece to carry around and really completes the figure. I'd say because it's so large, it's actually uncharacteristically plain, almost like it was meant for a smaller toy and blown up, if that makes sense. The grunt itself, however, is quite immaculate. I love the feel of his pointy, ridged backpack, and his face. Well, check this out, his breathing apparatus can be removed. And yeah, that's a face only a mother can love. It's terrifying. That's the thing about the grunts that's really fun. You know, they're goofy and comedic, and easy to kill in-game. But if you ran into this thing in real life, you'd probably shit your pants. Moving along, we got Cortana. Yeah, this is the Halo 3 design. Not quite as good as the Halo 4 design, but it'll have to do. Now this figure is kind of unique in the sense that the value comes from the gimmick. Like Cortana herself is translucent, which is cool, and there's a nice sense of detail added by the blue paint, but she's got zero articulation. This is something you'd get from McDonald's or Burger King, not a deluxe product from McFarlane. What sets her apart from Happy Meal toys, however, is the pedestal. If you put some batteries in here, it'll light her up from beneath using LEDs, simulating her appearance in the game. The problem is, dummy Kyle left the batteries in too long and corroded the components. So I used my lights here to simulate the effect. I'd say the real thing has a softer touch and is a little more pleasing to look at, but you get the idea. And unlike every other figure in this set, since Cortana comes with a base and pegs, she stands perfectly. I guess this might be the worst figure in the anniversary set, and I might have preferred something more traditional with articulation, but the gimmick is pretty cool. As a display piece, it's not bad. And we saved the best for last. This is the Retro CE Master Chief. That's Combat Evolved for those who don't play the games. This figure mimics the blocky aesthetic of the first game in the series. So if you're a fan of that look, this is just an incredible thing to own. The Chief I showed you before from the campaign co-op box set might appeal more to a certain audience, but I just really like the retro vibe. And I think this is something that's more commonplace now than when this figure was released. But yeah, if you're into chunky armor and hard edges, this is the figure for you. His boots stand firm, his articulation is on point, and look at that visor. I love how it's segmented into smaller squares, as if it was actually a low poly model. He comes with an assault rifle, of course, it is CE after all, and just look at him, man, what a work of art. If you're a fan of Halo 1, you really have to get this figure. And before we move on, I should mention this little peg system we got going here. You get these black pieces that can go into their backs and on their thighs. These are places where you can mount additional weapons, just like in the game, how you can have one active and one stowed away. And that's not exclusive to this set. I believe all the figures, at least up to a certain point, have these little holes in different spots. Also, I think Chief came with a frag grenade and maybe the Arbiter came with the plasma grenade, but the fact is I have these, and they're really small. Here's a nickel for scale. Honestly, I'm surprised I haven't lost them. These things are like microscopic. But credit where it's due, you can mount them with the black pegs, or if you prefer, they can often be held. The frag fits perfectly in Retro Chief's hand. Like, it's amazing. Also, I should mention a neat bonus. All of these toys come with an additional piece, and when put together, it forms the legendary difficulty emblem. That's the one with the elite skull and the crossed swords. Doesn't really do anything, but it's neat to see it as a tangible three-dimensional object. Next up, I have a figure in its package. Yes, this is sealed. It's the Equipment Edition Halo 3 Arbiter with plasma sword and bubble shield. The reason this one is still in its package is because I already had two other Arbiters using the same mold. It seemed a bit redundant to open yet another when I could keep it mint condition. Not that I plan to resell it. I love this stuff and I'll hold on to it till the day I die. Maybe my daughter can make some money off eBay. Anyway, it's neat that it's totally transparent. Some people are really into that. But I do find it funny that it's mimicking the camo effect, while the actual piece of equipment is the bubble shield. Yeah, that doesn't quite make sense, does it? Anyway, there's not much to say here. It's exactly the same Arbiter as I have from the Halo Anniversary set, complete with another energy sword, except this time transparent. Speaking of the Arbiter, here's another object from my collection. This is also from McFarlane, but it's not an action figure. This is a statue, a plastic one, from the Halo 3 Legendary Collection. It's one of 3. There's the Arbiter, Chief fighting some Flood, and a Brute Chieftain. I must say this is the best of the bunch, and that's not just because it's the one I own. The Arbiter is my favorite Halo character, which you might have guessed from the number of figures I own. And this is just an excellent pose. He looks so badass with one foot on a hill and the sword ready to go. Yeah, super cool. The detail work is quite good, and the paint is everything you would hope for. It just has a very strong sense of quality about it. Like, the others are toys. They could be played with, but probably displayed. But this is purely for display. This is something you put on your shelf and say, hey, look at me. I'm a Halo fan. And maybe people will respect you. Probably not, but it's a possibility. So let's draw a line in the sand. There are those, let's call them Bungie purists, who love Halos 1 through 3, ODST, and Reach. As for everything after that, they pretend it doesn't exist. And if you're one of those people, hey, no shade. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe. And for everyone else who might be a little more open-minded about 343's abominations, redesigns, stay tuned for part 2.